and it's in the breaking. We come unbound, and it's in the giving. We are found, yeah. You could barely change.
Welcome to A Medicinal Mind, Wisdom and Well-Being, a podcast dedicated to the telling of authentic stories and the sharing of insightful wisdom, exploring science and spirituality, medicine and Mother Nature. No topic is off limits when it comes to growing our personal understanding and supporting our collective well-being. With your host, Dr. Rob Abbott, a family medicine resident practicing spiritually focused and evolutionarily informed functional medicine, we hope to nourish your being so that you can flourish in whatever the moment has called for you to do.
And I know you tried.
In episode 14 of A Medicinal Mind, Wisdom and Well-Being, I welcome student doctor and my new partner in all things well-being and resilience, Jordyn Feingold. Jordyn is now a second-year medical student at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, where she is actively working toward her combined MD and Master's in Clinical and Translational Research. Before medical school, Jordyn attended undergrad and received a master's degree in Applied Positive Psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. As you will hear in the show, Jordyn is a founding member of the Student Trainee Division of CHARM, the Collaborative for Healing and Renewal in Medicine, a national network of medical students and residents working together with physicians to identify best practices around physician well-being and promote the resilience of medical practitioners. She is currently the co-chair of the Student Wellness Committee at Icahn and is working within her own school and with the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center to develop resilience trainings for medical students, trainees, and practicing physicians. Most importantly, however, Jordyn rejuvenates by singing, exercising, cooking, and nurturing her relationships with family and friends. Jordyn and I met as a result of the thoughtful connection from my previous guest in episode 12, Grace Cormier. Following a short introduction, Jordyn and I were off to the races, sharing stories of medical education, positive psychology, and how we came to discover what exactly it was we were both called to do. Following our initial smiles and tears of disbelief, our passions for supporting fellow medical trainees has only continued to grow. As you heard in Jordyn's introductory bio, we have recently collaborated to build a new social network of passionate medical trainees, dedicated to supporting each other's well-being and changing the way medicine is practiced. We are so excited to share this collaborative group with you. And as we discuss in the show, please reach out via email and explore the current database of students via the notes on the podcast page to join in and share in our collective mission to improve wellness in all aspects of medicine. Besides sharing our excitement over this new network, our conversation today explores much of Jordyn's fascinating background, bridging early undergraduate coursework in positive psychology and her calling to pursue medicine. Jordyn shares her views on positive medicine and details her unique wellness program, Revamp. In the discussion, she describes the creation of this unique, six-faceted program and her active pursuits to help students, residents, and physicians successfully focus on the necessary aspects for living a fulfilled and meaningful life. From physical vitality and relationships to accomplishment and positive emotions, Jordyn provides us with an amazing introduction to her multifaceted and revolutionary approach and shares her own experience in living it each and every day. Jordyn is perhaps one of the most passionate and visionary individuals I have ever met, and I'm beyond grateful for the connection that made our friendship possible. Jordyn will no doubt become a regular guest and contributor on the show, and I genuinely believe you will resonate with her passionate mind and creative endeavors. And please, if you enjoy the show, we would greatly appreciate if you could leave a positive review in iTunes or Apple Podcasts, as this is the single best way, beyond word of mouth, for others to find our work. I have been smiling from the very beginning of this podcast, astonished by the increasing numbers of listeners with each and every show. I am so thankful for your support and couldn't imagine finding the time or energy to write and record each week while navigating the 70 to 80-hour work weeks of my family medicine residency training. Your words and support make it all possible and never fail to keep a smile on my face and joy in my heart every step of the way. I really hope you enjoy the show. Well, Jordyn, thank you for joining me today for another iteration of this lovely thing I call a podcast. And just thank you for sharing some space with me and let people know who you are and why we're talking today.
Thank you. So I am Jordyn Feingold. I am currently in my dorm room apartment of my medical school. I am a rising second-year medical student at Mount Sinai, which is now known as the Icahn School of Medicine. And I recently finished, before coming to med school, my master's degree in applied positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm a MAPster because it is the MAP program.
Not to be confused with a Napster.
Oh, no, definitely not a Napster, but a MAPster. Map with two P's, stir. What is a Napster, may I ask?
Wasn't that some sort of music platform? Yeah.
Napster. Yep.
We're not that old, are we?
No, I don't know if I had a Napster account ever, but my older sister definitely did. And we totally, I guess, it wasn't called torrenting then, but that's how you got just music off the internet from it. Not sure how legal it was, but I just remember feeling kind of we're downloading music off the internet. It was such a novel, weird concept. So. Just as novel, perhaps, and as weird as being a Mapster.
Oh. So something I'm sure we'll get into today.
So MAP is this really special and unique master's program. It's a professional, it's a program designed for professionals, so people who work full time and are of all ages and life across the life spectrum. I did it immediately after graduating from college, which made me the youngest in my class, and our oldest classmate is in his 70s. It's hard to believe that because he's really just, he doesn't seem it. He's really youthful, but yeah, everyone is of all ages and places in life, professions, a lot of lawyers, educators, people in the business world, health and healing folks. So that's sort of the category that I fell into as a pre-med student. But yeah, so I come from a background of positive psychology, and now what I'm doing is applying everything that I learned about positive psychology and everything that I continue to learn in this field into medicine and medical education and ultimately patient care.
Which is precisely why we're having this conversation today.
Yeah.
So passionate about these ideas and how to bring wellness and cultivate resilience in the medical healthcare setting. using these principles. And, I guess we can't go too much further into this podcast without, maybe explaining the story, the circumstances of, us connecting. And I just have to simply say, like, I was, so happy to connect with you. And at the same time, just like, how did I not know that this person existed? It's like just somebody out there speaking the same language. So maybe perhaps you can tell the story of, how we connected.
Sure. So that phenomenon of coming across someone's work and you're just like, wow, how have I not been exposed to this before? Or how have I not known that you are? How have I not read this before? And that's totally something that just keeps happening to me in a really pleasant way. So I'm so glad that we've connected and can now face some of those things together and continue to, educate each other and open each other's eyes to this stuff. But so it was very, fortuitous. Anytime I see an email from Grace Cormier, I know, well, not always, but often I know that I'm going to be connected with someone awesome, because Grace is a fellow Mapster and really super involved and historically been really involved in the Positive Psychology Center and their amazing resilience projects. And more recently has been working with Adam Grant, and she was just on your podcast and she's amazing. But so, Rob, you must have emailed Adam Grant after reading something about option B?
Heard him on the podcast, Krista Tippett's podcast, actually.
That is one of my favorites. And so many people told me to watch that episode or to listen to that episode. And I immediately did. So.
But yeah, so basically listened to that podcast and was like, I need to reach out to this person, even though there's no way I'm sure that he will be able to respond to me, even if he actually wanted to, just, knowing the vast multitudes of interviews and things he would be doing. So, but decided to take that leap of faith anyway.
So Adam, I'm so glad you did email him, because if I've gotten to know him pretty well. He's a former professor of mine, and we connected while I was at Penn. And he spends time, I think he starts his days every morning. He is the most productive person I've ever met. He clears his inbox and really reads everything and goes through things really carefully. And he's kind of meticulous about it. And he really makes sure that he spends like 5 minutes. He really does try to get back to everyone. And it's pretty amazing the speed at which he can do it, because he's doing so many other things and immersing himself in new fields. But he knew that, Grace would be a good person to connect you to, because Grace knows this vast network of people from MAP and just from life and her own network. So she connected us, she connected you and me, and I forget what her subject line was, but immediately or maybe it was with your response, but I felt just the sheer warmth and just shared mission between us, and the rest is history.
The rest is history, and continuing to make history while, of course, staying in the present moment. But I am so excited for some of the projects and things that we have already started to collaborate on, and I'm sure we'll get to discuss some of those. But
totally, me too.
Would love to. I know. Your inspiration, your passion. It is very contagious.
It's so mutual. I feel like we have a resonance between us. I just remember that when we were emailing that first day, when we made that official connection and finally moved Grace to BCC, when you were reading my master's capstone and just you wrote a stream of consciousness email that was like the kindest, most amazing thing I've ever read. And it was just like, wow, like I have tears in my eyes. This is like so my thing. And it was just like, it was so, you were hitting on like exact lines and quoting things that resonated with you. And I just like felt it in such a real way on the receiving end. And it was like a positive intervention.
It was, I can feel it. It was both ways, that mutual just sort of validation and just knowing that, the work and the time that you had put, I know hours and hours and hours, days, and so much of your time into creating that framework, and was just like sitting here like, this is unbelievable, and wanting to be able to share this and with a greater audience. And so that's really why I was so excited to have what I'm sure is going to be the first of many conversations about some of these concepts. And wanted to kind of get at least in this episode, a good, introduction into some of your work and the principles behind building positive psychology into medicine, or as you have coined, positive medicine. And
Yeah.
But before we do, I love always kind of starting, and it's kind of a steal off of Kristen Tippett's podcast, just, to be perfectly honest, but, would love to hear a little bit about your background and,
Sure.
A bit about maybe perhaps your childhood and early years before all the quote unquote formal academic education.
Yeah. So I love how Krista starts her podcast, by the way. It's great. But so my childhood was, thank goodness, just a really happy one, really close-knit family. I have an older sister, and I had an older cousin who is 14 years older than me, who came to live with us when I was 3 years old. And so he's like a brother to me, and now he is, married. I love his wife, and they have amazing kids. So super close with my siblings and my parents. We grew up in Livingston, New Jersey, just, outside New York City. And my mom is the director, and she's now the director of an early childhood center, a preschool. And she was a teacher there for years before she was the director. And it was where I went to preschool. And, this place, it was our synagogue. It was an extension of my home. And it was a place that I was always really deeply connected to as a kid, and loved all my teachers. And, after going through preschool, the teachers would be part of my life henceforth, because my mom would work there and was, became the director there. So little kids and children and preschool age children were always a huge part of my life. My sister is now a speech pathologist in Manhattan, and she works with children, a lot of children all across the health spectrum, physical health, mental health, and really loves it. So kids are like such a part of our lives and our upbringing. And, I went to summer camp and really dealt with, it was an all-girls uniform summer camp in Pennsylvania. I was actually just there this weekend for a visit. But it was, being with girls and learning just how to fend in the girl world and be a teenager. I mean, it's the most amazing, magical place. But, any 300 girls in a camp, and, you learn a thing or two about, friendships and, just how to fight well with friends, and how to resolve conflict and love girls, and being a girl and having girlfriends. And it was an amazing experience, but it always inspired me to want to work with young women and, children, and really adolescent girls. And that's totally something that I see myself doing professionally with, the perfect application for positive psychology. That's actually what I was doing up at camp this weekend, was, talking to counselors and some campers about, maximizing their well-being at camp and in their lives. And really, the end of the summer is near, and how to really be in the present moment when they know the time is coming to an end. So the applications for this stuff are really endless, but I would love ultimately to all of those experiences really led me to think, like, this is what I want to do in a medical context, from a real physical and mental health perspective, of just, really holistically treating young people and helping them navigate these years, and which can be really challenging.
It's amazing sitting here hearing, these pieces of your life story. And we've talked on numerous occasions in our sort of short friendship so far, and just hearing the new aspects to your life story that I hadn't yet heard. And it just makes, so much sense to the other pieces of your story that we have talked about a little bit more, in terms of, your positive psychology education and background in medicine. And it just, I'm sitting here like, duh, of course this was sort of like your upbringing, and what a perfect venue to show people some of these principles. I mean, I share the same belief of, adolescence and youth, and where I think we need to pour so much of our time and resources in terms of mental well-being and just supporting people. It's we're so impressionable. I don't know about you, but I mean, I think I've probably said this on other podcasts, but like a freshman in high school or a sophomore in high school, you're so impressionable. And if, for good or for bad, and if you have someone in your life who can be such a wise teacher, or it can be an English teacher, whoever, a basketball coach, but somebody who can be just this mentor and presence, bringing some positivity and showing you practices that will further allow you to, the fisherman teaching you how to fish, so to speak, but giving you those practices, like exponential amount of well-being and flourishing can be promoted. And it's not to say that we can't focus on adults or older generations, but there's just so much untapped and so much need for it now in our age where technology just kind of takes over sometimes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with kids. Really, what an amazing time to intervene when identity formation is happening and kids are really becoming, not that we're not always becoming who we are, but kids in a very real way, teenagers are, deciding what their values are and being tested in different environments, and, hormones are raging and navigating those waters, and just coming of age is a really interesting time. But, speaking to you as a family medicine resident, I also think it's really about engaging the family, because no child is an island, and without engaging, and I think multiple generations of the family, that would be like the best thing to do. But the parent child, that dyad, or that family unit, I think that's such an important point of intervention for some of these positive interventions, because a kid can only change to the extent that their environments allow them to.
Yeah, and so I just, we could totally
this is
stay
a whole
on this
other
subject
conversation
for the whole podcast, and I would love it. But I'm sitting here, and it's very obvious too, like I said, putting these pieces together of your life story, that whether you knew it consciously or not in those sort of formative years, I feel like despite this calling to medicine, perhaps there was this sort of calling to this realm of positive psychology. But was curious, in your own words, to maybe share what came first, or maybe it's a chicken and the egg problem. Maybe medicine and this positive psychology, it was kind of mutual and they both came together at the same time. But maybe would love for you to share who were perhaps some of your early mentors, or how did you find yourself into this space?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and it's something that it's so funny because I struggle with it myself, to think about what did come first. I think the positive orientation and positive calling definitely came first. However, I didn't know that there was a field of study that actually could capture what I was so passionate about. So, just in and of itself. So medicine was just such I didn't know positive psychology existed. So medicine was just such a natural career path. And so speaking of early mentors, my high school biology teacher, Miss Provost, she was such a formative influence on my life. And she was just a phenomenal teacher, a biology professor. And she was so compelling in her teaching. And if anyone, she would make such a good teacher of teachers, because she was just phenomenal. Like, I had a lot of great teachers, but she really stood out. And she got me just so excited about the human body and the digestive tract, and the story of how she would literally bring her bagel before the bell rang and be eating a bagel, and then spend the next period telling us the story of how her bagel was going to be digested. And it was just so compelling and captivating, and I loved it. And I knew once I could handle sort of the high school level rigor of biology, I somehow convinced myself, okay, then I can be a doctor. Then I can do medicine.
They're like the same thing.
I figured that's the route, that's the path. So just continue just taking the science classes, and you can go help people. And it wasn't really until college that I realized that medicine wasn't really so much on a practical level about promoting health. It was, the medical model was about treating disease and, treating illness or preventing illness. But that is very different than promoting health and well-being. And somehow it wasn't until I discovered positive psychology and sort of the thesis of positive psychology, which is it's the study of the best parts of life. It is the studies of what makes life worth living, metaphorically north of neutral, more than the absence of disease or depression or anxiety. Positive psychology is the promotion of well-being and human flourishing. So until I really understood that, the idea that medicine didn't do that didn't really resonate with me. And then I discovered, I was like, I was planning on taking the MCAT and applying to med school and, going straight from undergrad. And I said, I need to wait a second and maybe I need to do this positive psychology thing before actually going to med school so that I can go into medicine with this, this paradigm, this lens that I know is just so true to my values and what I believe to be, the truth of healing and just what works for me and what I think would work for a lot of patients and people and doctors themselves is to focus on the positive.
And let's just, not to interrupt, but to point out the fact that there is in no way, shape, or form that is any standard prerequisite or anything that's normally done by anyone going into medicine. Maybe I'm making a big generalization, but I don't know very many other people who would take time to do such a program knowing that medicine was in their future and see that as like a linear or a progressive path. I find that so amazing that you had that insight.
Yeah, maybe because I always knew medicine. That was never a doubt in my mind. So delaying medical school was never even like, maybe I won't end up going or like, maybe I'll find this other thing that I like more. It was much more, this is definitely the stepping stone to a career, making this stuff happen in medicine. And then I didn't exactly know how it was going to work. I didn't know, I didn't even know that I was going to be intervening on medical student well-being at that point. I just knew that like in my gut to, bring back the gut, but it viscerally, I just knew that I needed to study positive psychology. And it's because I found out what I had an inside view into that program because it was at Penn and I stumbled upon it in a really silly kind of funny way. And I got an inside view into what the students were like. And it was them that convinced me. It was the people. It wasn't just the idea of the program. It was a very real experience with the people in the program. And that's when I knew.
I mean, it sounds like just from your early descriptions, such a diverse group of individuals with so many perhaps, different motivations for pursuing it on the surface, but yet this, I feel like, unifying belief in the principles and values, no matter the practical utility or practical application.
Oh, it's such a calling. It's a group of people with very diverse backgrounds from across the world. People come to this program from really so many countries, from Israel, from Switzerland, from Australia, from India, from China, everywhere. Germany, just really, I had classmates from across the globe. And what unites us is this underlying assumption and often also a healthy amount of skepticism that there is something.
I call it curiosity.
Yeah. It's you're right. It isn't skepticism. It is much more, I have more to learn about this and I'm not going to accept it as truth until I do a really healthy investigation, because until you really study positive psychology, it's hard to realize the scientific rigor of what a lot of people are saying because, I think people who associate themselves sort of as positive psychologists or positive psychology practitioners, they try to do a really good job of bringing in data and an empirical basis to it. But because the field is also so relatively new, there's so much innovation happening really quickly. So we just, we're on a cusp. We're really, the field is blossoming in really amazing ways, and innovation is happening, and authors are, just coming out of everywhere, and it's a really exciting time for this field.
it is sort of like a renaissance, kind of this explosion of new ideas and thought leaders and very creative minds. And, I'm just sitting here just kind of for fun. I was playing around with this idea in my mind of, what's the difference between, I was joking sort of like skepticism versus curiosity, but I sort of think about it, in this positive versus sort of negative, outlook of, curiosity I see as like wanting to seek the truth. It's truth seeking. Skepticism is actually seeking to disprove.
Totally.
It's sort of like we're trying to find reasons against.
Yeah.
But positive, motivation and this curious, optimistic outlook is I want to seek truth no matter what that entails.
Yeah. It's
and
that.
I feel like that's,
yeah.
it's, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. It's the dimension of skepticism with an openness to experience. And you got it exactly right. Like when we really break it down, it's the skepticism. You're right. It's you want to disprove. You are looking to strip an argument down. Whereas, the curious mind is one of wonder and openness and looking, and it's the word truth is I think I just used it before of true. It's such a funny word in this context because we're all seeking truth but I just and then I think but how much of truth is subjective, how much of the truth of how I live my life won't work for everyone, but to me it's so real and it's just curiosity looking for truth and what is real. It's just a funny sort of existential concept. And I realize we're off topic once again.
Hey, it's okay. I wanted to sort of, we would love to get into the wonderful meat of some of your work. But I did, I was just sitting here and kind of wanted to preface one more thing that I think is a beautiful concept to share with folks, and it's this idea, and I've slowly come to believe this and live this, being in the field of medicine where so much appears concrete and there's so much tradition and, seeking evidence-based. And I sort of, have realized that, my calling, and I think the calling of so many, yes, being a teacher, a purveyor, of wisdom and passing on new knowledge, but I've realized that I'm much more interested now in acquiring ways of thinking and acquiring skill sets, acquiring knowledge that won't become obsolete in 20 years. I want to spend my time, poring over sort of spiritual wisdom, incorporating practices, spending time with people, building skills of nourishment and teaching that aren't going to suddenly be, like I said, obsolete in 20 years because of technological advances. And this isn't to demean or put down anyone's work in medicine, some of the specialists of what they do. But I guess I can't wake up in the morning knowing that I am going to go learn something that maybe 20 years from now is completely irrelevant. Maybe let me go find areas, and that's kind of why I've pursued meditation, why I've pursued yoga, why I love learning about Ayurvedic medicine and some of the Eastern, medicine traditions and just, aspects of positive psychology. And it's just all of it is like, this has been going on for thousands of years or has been around for this long. And I don't see it suddenly disappearing. No. It's endured this long. I'm not sure what could intervene to take it away. And so I guess I encourage, everyone to see those parts of your life that are infinite in a way, the experiences that will carry forth in infinite ways and will continue to be relevant. And it's not to avoid aspects of your life that, maybe you're going to have to memorize those facts about the influence of virus and its capsid antigens.
And you will. You will.
Maybe you'll have to memorize that, but keep it in the context, step back, take the pause, and see what else that you're pouring into your being. Because perhaps,
absolutely.
I don't know. It was something that was hitting me here, and maybe you have different ideas about that, but I think it's a really important concept.
It's so important, and I think that the two happen. It happens simultaneously. We can't avoid learning about the influenza virus because there's just, as there's the stuff that all medical students need to know. But how do we learn how to learn that information in a way that sustains us and brings us joy? So, navigating study groups and different learning styles and pursuing your well-being so that your mind is more open to new knowledge and you can absorb the things that you do need to learn. So we can practice these skills. Medical school or any type of work environment or learning environment is the perfect way to be your own test subject. And the real messy laboratory that is life is a great way to try out whether things are working for you. So, being able to integrate those techniques like mindfulness meditation and deliberate breathing into the busy worlds of memorization and facts and stress that we can't always avoid. That's where we practice, and that's really where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, so I'm curious just right now. You mentioned a few just practices in that last sort of sequence, but what have you found in terms of some of these practices that have been the most sort of supportive of your own well-being, or those through your teaching of others have you found that people are most receptive to, or like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for introducing that concept or that that practice?
Yeah, so I think just a really basic one that's been really good for me is just exercise and taking care of my physical body and mind and knowing that and really just taking stock of how good what I'm doing for myself when I am choosing to go for a run or do a class or, go for a walk with a friend, and how when I can layer on different elements of my life. So for instance, going for a run with a friend, or going for a run and listening to a podcast, or going for a walk and being in nature on a hike through the park and listening to a lecture. Like if I can combine things that bring me joy in my life into sort of activities for positive experiences for myself, and then build those things into my day, it makes me really able to sustain and enjoy all of the things that are a little bit more depleting. So it's like synergizing the friendships and physical wellness with, then going home and cooking a healthy meal. And then I'm just so much more able to be productive and have an open mind to the world of things that need to get done.
I love that description. And, it's funny you mentioned, talking about the word joy and this sort of compounding effect. I kind of call it joy amplification.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, how many things can I, kind of put together, especially in situations where time might be limited,
Right.
and sort of amplify that nourishment. And I think, this last week of my residency training is the greatest example. I worked close up to my sort of 80-hour limit, and was actually doing like a night sort of into early morning, and decided, I took a little nap right as I got off, but was like, I want to spend this day. My girlfriend had come to visit me, and we ended up going to this beautiful nature sort of arboretum, and just spent time walking around and reading, and even did a little bit of reflective writing, and just sitting in nature together, talking, and being surrounded. So sort of this exercise, but at the same time, just deep rest and personal connection, and packaging it all into this experience. And I felt like I was working today in the clinic, and it's like, I didn't even feel any effects of like that I had just worked 80 hours this last week. And I was like, it hit me today, like, oh my goodness, that was so important.
It was rejuvenating.
It was only maybe like 2 hours on paper, but it was just so rejuvenating. And you kind of, but you got to make that deliberate practice, and realize maybe you're going to have limited amount of time. And so you can't necessarily go to the gym for an hour and listen to a podcast by itself in an hour. And, like maybe there's this, these connections that you have to build together, but they can be so exponentially rewarding or amplified.
Totally. And especially if it's like, you're with your girlfriend, you're having this amazing day, and you're also expressing gratitude toward one another and talking about savoring the experience and, other memories. So even inherent in just the content, forget about what you're doing, but what you're talking about and the content of that conversation, if it is of, positive, a positive sort of swing or dimension, then you can amplify it even more, just, irrespective of what of what you're actually doing.
It is so true, and I think gratitude is going to be our best, in its best attempt at a segue into the rest of the podcast. But
I love it.
Exactly so much of, I laugh, like looking at some of our text messages when back and forth when I was at the hospital, like there was so much just gratitude and thanks being shared, and I cannot say enough how important sharing that gratitude on a daily basis has been in my life, with my loved ones, but also, with my coworkers, and just sharing your appreciation for the role and the work and the presence of others can go so far in cultivating your well-being and supporting those other people in your life, their well-being. And
absolutely.
So perhaps, I would love for that to be kind of a segue into this amazing curriculum of principles and practices that you have implemented and now are beginning to share, in your own medical school and even, in communities far beyond. And would love to sort of, tap into maybe the work that you've done, and we can do a little introduction here, and like I said at the intro, let's bring you back and delve more deeply into some of these different concepts. But starting here, let's maybe dig into at least an introduction to some of the key concepts and practices that you've introduced.
That sounds great, and there will be more, so we won't go too far, and make sure to reel me back in, because sometimes I just can't help myself. But
I'll try my best.
Yes. So the work revolves around an acronym, because who doesn't love an acronym? And it's a core tenet. It's the core tenets of well-being, and it's a construct. It's an acronym, and it's a call to action for all of us to sort of rethink or revamp the way we conceive of ourselves and pursue our well-being. So just to preview the overarching construct, and then you can let me know how much further we want to go for now, or what we can save for next time. So it's revamp, it's relationships, the relationships we have with ourselves, with our close personal others, our colleagues, our friends, our patients as medical practitioners. And then there's engagement. So the degree to which we really enjoy and are immersed in what we're doing every day. And in engagement, some of the buzzwords I talk about are the mindfulness practice and the non-judgmental awareness of the present moment and flow states, and really losing yourself in the activities you're doing. And then finally, under engagement, I talk about character strength and using the best parts of ourselves in our lives every day in service of having deeper engagement in the work that we do. And so those are the first two letters. Should I keep going, Rob?
Yeah, sure. We can, I love, that was perfect as sort of a brief introduction. And then we can go back and maybe pick out dig a little bit deeper in a few concepts, but that's perfect.
Cool. Okay. So I'll just keep going. So we and then we vamp. We have our vitality. So vitality is the V in revamp. And that is our energy level, our ability to do our everyday tasks and more with vigor. So really just meeting the demands of our minds and our bodies with the physical constraints that we have. So physical activity and nutrition and sleep, all of the energy management, sort of metabolic inputs and outputs of our physical body falls under vitality. And here I'll mention that these letters, this construct of well-being, revamp is a novel formulation of these components, but it is not the first to uncover what these components are. And the most recent construct of well-being that this is based on is Martin Seligman's PERMA model. And he's the father of positive psychology. And I say this because he did not include the V in PERMA. It was just the other 5 elements. So the V is something that's really near and dear to me, this vitality element, as a future medical doctor who knows the importance of the mind-body relationship and our physical health, really playing a massive role in our mental states and what we experience on a daily basis. So just a little caveat there. And then after the V, we have accomplishment, which is, our feeling like we are achieving the goals and landmarks that are set up for ourselves. And because accomplishment can be pursued sort of in and of itself for its own sake and not for other sort of pro-social ends. And in medicine, we can often feel like we just have to keep going and furthering our careers and just, being sort of a part of this just publish or perish culture. I think it's really important with accomplishment or positive accomplishment to think about having a pro-social mission and always keeping that at the front of our mind to the things that we seek to achieve. So knowing that success is a non-zero sum game. So, another person's success does not mean that you are somehow weaker or need to fail because someone else is winning. So just keeping that in mind, that positive accomplishment is not just blind pursuit of goals for the sake of pursuing goals and achieving those, brief rewards. It's really about a long-term deliberate practice toward the things that bring you the most meaning and joy in your life and are hopefully connected with the joy of other people.
Yeah, that's certainly, it's something, I talked quite a bit about with Grace, and one of the previous podcasts was sort of our kind of mixed feelings of accomplishment. And you hit on exactly the big point of, seeking sort of accomplishment for the sake of accomplishment itself. And, we say it in those words, and of course people will say, well, of course I don't do that. And the problem is that it's sort of an unconscious, insidious process when it develops. You create environments and reinforcing patterns, and you select certain voices, and it happens so much in academia. I mean, grades and this receiving accolades and awards for certain ways of performing just sort of subtly and very or sometimes very obviously reinforce certain choices that we make and can lead you outside of that core value system of why was I even pursuing this in the first place. And so I know it's a very difficult and challenging sort of area to talk about, but because it boils down to me of we need we want to be able to see progress. We want to be able to acknowledge growth. And if we can stay in the incremental sort of growth state, and that idea of that growth mindset from Carol Dweck of realizing that I see challenges as not something to and failure as something to avoid, but as opportunity to grow and recognize I am no less or better of a person, whether I'm able to, accomplish this task or get past this challenge in this moment or, 10 years from now. And, but trying to, tackle these challenges or face challenges without attachment, positive or negative, I think is incredibly, incredibly important when there's just so much information and feedback getting poured in, not maliciously, but, just so much feedback telling us that, this is why we should be doing something when maybe it's completely against your inner core of, like you mentioned, my desire to serve greater humanity.
You hit on so many important points there. So many. And, whether it's losing sight of your intrinsic motivation or, just this idea that we can't just get on this treadmill of, expectations and rewards if it's not true to our own values. So yeah, no, you hit on so much good stuff. This could be a whole other conversation, and I'm resisting.
Yeah, no, you have so much self-control. I'm impressed.
It's all the grit I'm employing through positive accomplishment.
And so, I guess that that leads us into the last sort of portion of revamp. Probably the two components of revamp. I mean, they're all so important in my life, but maybe the two, components that have really shaped my path the most, and would love to hear how they have, impacted you and how they've grown into your work.
Sure. So that's an awesome segue into meaning and our larger sense of purpose and knowledge that we are yet just a small piece of the magic of the world we live in. And whether you're spiritual with a religious practice or just sort of psychologically spiritual, or you're not such a believer, but you feel connected to other people and nature and the earth, that's the essence of meaning. It's the interconnectedness and boundlessness of the human experience when you feel like you're part of something that's bigger than the self. It's not just you, but you're working towards a larger purpose or mission, and that's meaning. And I think we can find it in the medical humanities, in really deliberate discussions about our values, and perhaps engaging with some sort of personal or professional oath writing, and connecting with our core values, and just really letting yourself open up to awe and just all of these really powerful positive emotions, which is the last element. And these two are really tied together, because the experience of positive emotions, which is the last revamp element, can really be elevating and lead you to have experiences that feel somewhat supernatural and sort of extra or otherworldly, if you will. And
I call it the "is this really happening" moment.
yeah, like, is this real? And that is those feelings of transcendence and boundlessness that we have in moments of awe, and other positive emotions like calm or serenity, when you're just so at ease with yourself and with the universe, that those are the final essences of revamp, the meaning and subsequent positive emotions that follow.
It is so beautiful, and we joke, yes, the sort of the relative importance that gets placed in medicine and the world in general of these beautiful acronyms, but it's such a great way to sort of embody the meaning of all these aspects. And I see the way that you've laid it out, and why we've really come together is recognizing this burden of clinician burnout, and why it's not a simple answer as to why burnout develops, and it's not a simple answer as to how we can solve it. There's no magic pill, but I see in the elements of revamp in discovering meaning and cultivating these positive emotions and re-engaging in relationships so that you can truly thrive and feel like you've accomplished something. All of these things are elements that can get suppressed or become dysfunctional, and can lead to burnout. It's you can see all of these areas as both from a more negative lens of these are the areas that become dysfunctional, or as we see it as like these are areas that we need to cultivate so that we can prevent burnout. And so it's both a preventative framework, but also like an active. I can find so much within each of these elements that we can can make actionable in this moment for someone who's experiencing so much burnout or so much fatigue. So in that sense, it just becomes so empowering to know that like I have a tool here that is applicable no matter where on the no matter on the spectrum where someone might fall, whether they're like just so burdened by burnout, or if they're feeling so vital, so optimally healthy, but just want to continue and maintain that state. I think that's why this is so important. And I would love to hear like maybe your experience in implementing some of these principles on different sides of that spectrum. So perhaps teaching and engaging with individuals who are maybe a little bit more overworked or burned out, versus applying and giving some of these practices and teaching about them to those who are very, would say that they have a great sense of well-being.
Yeah, so many great questions here. And I've been, fortunate enough to get to do these interventions with a variety of populations. And there are some things that are really variable and some things that are quite universal. So the first thing I'll say is that the revamp elements do, as you mentioned, cater themselves really well to very concrete and discrete skill sets that can be taught, that are, based in positive psychology interventions or cognitive behavioral therapy, that are very just concrete ways we can improve our relationships, and, questions we can ask ourselves and metrics we can use to understand our character strengths and subsequently apply them in our lives, and, models of goal setting that we can employ to improve our accomplishment, in the sense that if we know how to set goals that are, specific and realistic and achievable and relevant in our lives, we can, then actually achieve our goals and feel that sense of accomplishment. So there are many concrete skills that I've developed through my capstone, and now I'm iterating on these exercises in the Sinai Resilience Project and trying out different versions of them with folks at Penn who I'm working with, and trying them at my camp where I worked with the staff and with psychiatry residents. There are so many populations we're working with. And I would say that the findings, just anecdotally so far, because a lot of this work is fairly new, is that, I've worked with people who are, just starting medical school who are not feeling the burnout. I'm working with really burnt out summer camp counselors who feel like they're far away from home, they're across the world and taking care of, dozens of girls, and they are just girls themselves. So there are different populations here, but the one thing is that we must break it down and really understand these skills in regards to the things that are in our control and the things that are out of our control. And we, with these techniques that are on the individual level, and we're teaching people how to be more self-compassionate and employ mindfulness and see things from an appreciative inquiry perspective, which is asking the questions, when is this system most alive, and how can we add more of the good things rather than seeing how the system is failing and getting rid of the failing parts. So all of these approaches that are individual approaches have to be in things that are within our control. We can't apply these things necessarily to systems that are not going to change because we think more positively or because we have more positive approaches to life. I think the goal on a more macro level over some time is that by creating a more mentally healthy, robust, resilient population of doctors, and in other fields, teachers and administrators, if we can improve the well-being of individuals through some of these individual-wide programs and, bring them into and as institutional norms, people will be more able to intervene on these systems that are in need of healing themselves, because our healthcare system and all of our education system, many of these systems are broken. But part of the reason they're broken is because the people who are in the system are burnt out and they are not able to adequately assess and then treat a lot of the problems. And it may sound like very idealist, but I think that if we have a cohort of physicians who are not, so burdened, and if they can actually really appreciate and maximize their professional lives to the best of their ability, they can make the systems better.
It's so true. I mean, I agree. I mean, the whole concept of sort of this grassroots community level engagement starts with the belief, the faith that, as an individual, through my presence and practice and connecting with others in my community similarly engaged in their personal, practice, we can institute greater change. But at the same time, it's, I find so much of the challenge comes from just wanting to know from a higher institutional level that A, it's okay to be broken and to say that I'm broken and that I need help, and B, that it's okay to work on these things. And I think, sometimes if there's no space at an institutional level to be able to nourish and grow and work, and if people feel so sort of suppressed in what they're able to potentially provide in terms of growth of cultivating well-being, then it's sort of easy to say, well, it's not worth my time, or things will never change, and get lost in sort of that negative thought spiral. And so I challenge sort of institutions to, like you said, take on that sort of build it into your mission statement, or start creating spaces within your hospital setting or the clinic settings that will allow people to engage in these practices. So it's meeting each other in the middle. It's engaging the grassroots, but also from the institutional level, saying we care about this, we care about your well-being, and this concretely is what we're doing about it. And somewhere in there, we can meet in this middle ground, and I think really flourish. But it can't just be one way.
Totally. The buy-in from the administration, from the organization, from the institution is absolutely essential. The only reason that I'm able to engage with these populations is because someone welcomed me in and said, this is something we care about and we want to hear from you. And we want you to talk to our students, to our counselors, to our staff, to our people because this is something that we aren't currently giving them and that they need. Or we are currently giving it to them, but we want to do a better job. And we want to really look to the science and really make sure that what we're saying is validated. And, we want to, this is important to us. So you're totally right. We cannot do this without the support of institutions. But what I'm saying about how individual level change leads to institutional change, I'm thinking like system wide in, not beyond the medical school level, beyond even the ACGME level, which is the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, and the standard that they are putting forth and, for residency programs to have wellness programming. But this needs to go into the practice of medicine, to the way incentives are set up for physicians, the way the electronic health record engages with with physicians and can get in the way with patient care if it's not really handled appropriately. So these positive approaches, I think, will hopefully extend beyond just clinician well-being and institutional, support of that, but also to the way our medical systems run more broadly.
Yeah, I share that optimistic view of really just steal your acronym to revamp and completely change some of these practices so that it just becomes a new state of being. And I really truly believe that's possible. And I feel very called that the reason we've come together, and this is where I would love to kind of sort of end this conversation, is talking about what it is that you have envisioned and what we've come together to do in order to support that community level engagement, but also from sort of a place of institutional support. And I think we both realized that we needed this broader network, and we needed to connect people. Realizing we didn't know each other until like a few months ago, and that was a problem. And so wanting to share resources and connect people, and would love to just, like I said, spend these last few minutes talking about one of our just recent projects and your vision to do this, to connect students and connect residents and other medical trainees from across various backgrounds to all share in this moment of building well-being and supporting each other.
Sure. So meeting you, Rob, was a huge catalyst to this vision, and it was something that has come across my mind. So let me backtrack. The vision was to bring together a group of medical students and trainees in tandem with a larger national organization that I have been a part of this year, called the Collaborative for the Healing and Renewal in Medicine, the Collaborative for Healing and Renewal in Medicine, CHARM is the name of the organization. And it was originally through AIM, which is a division of internal medicine, of internists. And I got brought on by one of my mentors at Mount Sinai, Dr. Rip, who I met immediately. Before I even got to Sinai, I was told I had to meet him because he has done a lot of research on burnout, and he's just an amazing person. And he is the co-chair of this organization, CHARM. And he invited me as a student representative to join this network of doctors, largely internists, who are talking about these issues and doing really amazing work on compiling best practices and creating a faculty toolkit for promoting resilience and well-being. And throughout this year, I've been working with them, and I couldn't help but think that, I was one of maybe one or two students on this whole committee, but student level initiatives are really important because burnout starts in medical school, or it probably starts before medical school, to be honest, but we really start seeing it manifest in med school because that's when we really start studying it. And we know that it continues on through residency education, and that's when it gets really bad. And then so we need stakeholders from within those groups to have representation on this larger committee if we're going to attack the problem from where it starts, which is during medical school. So meeting Rob and a few other folks throughout this year, really just, from just being at conferences or having Grace connect me with someone, just, I realize we need to all become part of a larger conversation and support each other and keep each other posted on conferences, and let's generate ideas and papers and ideas for randomized controlled trials that we could do across institutions. And I know it's kind of antithetical to the way a lot of medicine is practiced with, sort of like protection over ideas. And, I'm starting to feel that there is somehow a fear to give away some knowledge but I just don't want to, with all due respect to the institution and the way things are done, I'm really compelled by the idea of collaboration and opening up that space to innovate. And I think the best way to do that is to put minds together to do it, and not circumvent the need to reinvent the wheel over and over and over again because we would just share.
It is so true. I mean, that's this network, of trainees and students. I'm just so excited to be a part and to grow it, because exactly that. I mean, my last year in medical school, I decided, this was such, a calling and a need in my institution. I was like, I want to design a program to support well-being of nurses and medical students at the University of Virginia. And so I took it upon myself, with no great formal research background and no formal training in delivering a mindfulness or positive psychology, whatever you want to call it, sort of intervention, and saying, I want to create a program and invite people to take part, make it completely free, and then try to collect some research data about it so I can, maybe support some of my beliefs, and that this should become part of, formal education in the same way that, at the University of Virginia, the nursing school and the Compassionate Care Initiative, they're doing so many, wonderful programs, and the medical school has made a lot of growth, but isn't at that same level. And I was wanting to, potentially get some data to be able to share and, create something that could be very enduring, that was not independent on any one person, myself delivering the program. And I spent all of this time, creating it. And in the first sort of go around, I believe the programming and some of the principles were wonderful. And my sort of, lack of research insight and just, and kind of understanding how to get people involved and to collect data, it was all a learning experiment. I didn't, get the best of research data, but I made some of these programs, and then I stumble across your work and I see that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, some of your principles, some of your practices, and what you're doing this summer. Like, why should anyone have to go out and feel like they need to do it on their own? And it's not like I felt that. I felt called to do it, and like, this is, my sort of research program 1.0, and there's going to be 2.0 and 3.0, and that's what we have with growth. But we need to. There's so many people who care about this, but back to that burden piece, may feel like, where do I start, or how do I get a group, or what should I do? And that's what this network is for: is to be like, oh hey, wow, here's a 4-week program here. Here's some principles. Here's some practices that you can just take right now, and if we can freely give of that, freely give of our curiosity and creativity without attachment to say, oh, this is mine or this is my work.
Right.
Like, if we can get beyond that, we can help so many people.
Totally. And it's like there's more than enough work to be done, and work to go around, and projects to do, and interests that we're all going to have together. And how could we possibly think that this body of work could be in the hands of just a few people? This needs to be the co-creation of a whole new paradigm shift in medicine, and it needs to be the product of a lot of thought and research, and it needs to be among a diverse group of people. It just can't be, a handful of very loud people, or of, few but loud people. It needs to really be part of a larger cultural shift. And it needs to happen faster than the traditional path from evidence-based research to clinical practice. And the only way to do that is to really get more people engaged and grow this body of thought and work, and have people contribute to it who are excited by it, and not feel that, it has to be something that they're so protective over, or, the greater good is improving the health and well-being of clinicians, of patients, and of our population. So for such a positive, sort of pure goal, we have to sort of practice what we preach in the way that we go about it to a large extent.
Yes, I'm sitting here nearly speechless. It really is the future. And, I guess more concretely and very practically, for any medical student or resident or fellow or any medical trainee who's sitting here and like, yes, you just keep saying yes to everything that we're sharing. How can we get you involved? How can they get in touch with you, or get in touch with this network that we're building? What would you say would be at this stage, kind of the most practical way for people to get involved who are interested?
Shoot us an email. Just, first.lastname@gmail.com is always a good one to try. You'll reach that way. And just let me know that you're interested. Like we are growing. We don't even have our first cohort complete yet. We sent out invitations and solicited nominations for the first student trainee cohort of CHARM. But, the list is growing of eligible students and trainees, and we want to hear from you. And, at the end of the day, we're looking to grow this and have people who want to be present. So if you're one of those people and you will contribute and you're willing to have a couple conference calls throughout the year and contribute to some scholarly work and generate ideas with us, then we want you on board.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, we've talked about this too. Like I see the growth of this group as being, maybe there's a representative and every single residency program, internal medicine or family medicine, whatever, and at every medical school, whoever is invested in wellness or well-being or whatever term you want to use, we have, what if you have a representative in this network that you can, that we can have connected across just all of these fields? Like to me, on one hand, it seems like, wow, that's impossible. That would never happen. But on the other, it's like, that's exactly what this moment needs.
Yeah.
It's just like, I want to go on and see like, who's the person in Seattle who is so passionate and bringing wellness to their medical school, and, who is in Texas and who is in, and it was just like, I don't know, just seeing that. Now, I wouldn't need to necessarily talk to, any of the people on there, but just knowing that there's people out there that share those values and connections are being built, to me, that is just, that's a wordless feeling to me. That's just so amazing. And I feel it is actually, I say impossible, but could certainly, come about from these grassroots efforts.
Totally, because we're going to grow exponentially, because inevitably we have, residents become clinicians and they go to new institutions, and then we need to fill the spots at their old institutions and get more students at their new institution. So I really see this having a ripple effect and really just expanding out in so many directions. And, not just physicians, but nurse practitioners and nurses and physician's assistants and all the other health professionals who are part of patient care, engaging caregivers in this type of thing, anyone who's a patient themselves, because we're not just redefining self-care and what it means to pursue wellness from the clinician perspective. I want to move the mark on what we think of when we think about being healthy, and what it means to go see a doctor or a nurse and talk about and think about your health, and how that relates to your mind and what things that are within your own control to affect change on, and just really shifting the paradigm of what we currently think of as our health.
I couldn't say it any better. And I think this is a great sort of place to end this introduction into this field. And I hope for anyone listening, there's hopefully some content here that you can take away, but more than anything, I hope you can feel the passion that Jordyn has, that I have, to change, and that it invigorates and inspires you to go and to create positive change in your community and for yourself. And I'm excited for the next, our next conversations as we sort of dig into maybe some more of the practical concepts and practices in each of these areas. But I think this has been just a wonderful introduction to get people engaged and to share some of your, inspiring work.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Rob. This was so much fun. And for any listeners out there, I'm on Facebook, Jordyn H. Feingold, Jordyn with a Y. And I mentioned my email, and we'll put some information out there but reach out to us and write to Rob if you want to get involved in Charm, Student Trainee Division, or just if you want to chat about anything we talked about. We're pretty open.
I will certainly have contact information for Charm, how you can get in touch with Jordyn, as she said, how you can get in touch with me, and but before you go, you have 30 seconds to answer one more question.
Okay.
What was the thing that made you smile the most today? Perhaps a surprise.
So today was a really special day. I was at camp and I was there with my father, my dad, who is amazing. And we got to go, and my dad loves horses. He grew up riding horses, and we got to go to the barn and I got to see him pet all the horses. And it was really good timing because the barn was closing and someone had to run back in for something they left. And we snuck in and she showed us around, and I got to be with my dad and watch him, hang out with the horses.
That's so wonderful.
It was so cool.
It's the best way to end the day. I mean, I ask myself that question all the time. What challenged me? What made me smile? And what am I hopeful for tomorrow? And so thank you for sharing a little piece of your day, your smile. It brings a smile to my face.
Thank you so much, Rob.
All right. Well, until the next time, keep doing amazing work, and thank you for your presence. Thank you for your practice.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for your presence and willingness to receive a new narrative, a passionate perspective, and perhaps a deeper sense of connection with our collective purpose. Please share this podcast with any and all that you believe will benefit from its intention to relieve one's doing and engage one's being. Please share your comments about the conversation on our podcast page and leave a review in iTunes so that the voices in this space can spread to all ears ready to receive it. Music credit goes to Dillingham for their song Vessel. Remain open, stay curious, and forever be love.
You walked on fire, and I know you tried.